Thanks, Tim, and thanks for to Share Cafe for the opportunity to present here today. Uh, Magnis is quite a unique story. While it's in the battery space, it's one of these unique plays that is vertically integrated, where we're involved in from the mine all the way down to the production of the lithium-ion batteries itself. I might skip down to slide 3, if that's okay. Just a disclaimer there. So yeah, that's the vision, to be that global vertically integrated play. And throughout the presentation, we'll go through that in more detail with each of the projects and our involvement in all the aspects of that. Next slide, please. There's 3 main projects or 3 main verticals around battery manufacturing, where main project and that we have is the IM3 New York lithium-ion battery plant, which most will probably be familiar with. We also own just below 10% of C4V, which is a lithium-ion battery technology company. And then we have our mine in Tanzania, which is 100% owned by Magnis, and that's a graphite project that is nearing sort of first stage development works. Next slide, please. One of the markets that we see as being really important is the US market when it comes to lithium-ion batteries. It's probably one that's sort of lagged behind both Asia and the European markets in the amount of plants that are coming online and that are online at the moment, which has sort of worked really well for us and has been a huge opportunity for us. And we're in close to being in production. So we're at final stages of finalizing production at our New York battery plant in Endicott. As I'm sure most are familiar with, there's a lot of government funding that is being provided to groups who are in either cell manufacturing that is producing the batteries, or even the raw material plays or groups who are involved in the supply chain of lithium-ion batteries by the US government. And it's, I believe we're sort of in the right place at the right time with our project. And we're also looking at taking advantage of some other opportunities that are involved in the supply chain of lithium-ion batteries as well from a Magnis point of view. So we're evaluating a number of things as we go forward. Next slide, please. So New York battery plant. First and foremost, one of our key projects. We are the largest shareholder in the project. Between ourselves and C4V, the technology play, we pretty much own the majority of that project. We will be producing some of the greenest batteries out there. That was done by a study that was commissioned by NYSERDA, which is New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. They commissioned ABT Associates, a large consulting group in the US, to look at the whole life cycle analysis of the production of our batteries, which literally came out to say that we will be producing the greenest batteries globally. We say some of it because there's always new projects coming online. It is a supply chain that has no Chinese influence, which sort of also sets us apart from a lot of our peers out there. And in the US, we see, as we mentioned, there's a lot of growth in the area. There's a lot of funding coming into the area, and being able to establish ourselves and start our production in the coming months is something that we think will, set ourselves for the future. Over the page, please. So there's been a number of stages of production, starting with our manual production, which is completed, the semi-automated production or process that has been commenced. And towards the end of first half this year, we plan to be in production at that fully automated scale. We've got an experienced team, Ramboll, large Danish engineering group. There's been the main engineering contractor for the project. 95% of the energy will be powered by clean energy, and just a couple of sort of minor figures, like we will be aiming to produce 50 cells every 5 minutes. The plan is to scale up to 38 gigawatt hours. So we're starting with a capacity of 1.8 gigawatt hours, and the plan is to go up to 38 gigawatt hours and to grow that exponentially very quickly. Next slide talks about the financing that we recently completed, which was $100 million of financing, and it was intellectual property-based financing. So the financing was around the IP. So there's a couple of interesting aspects there. One confirms what we have been talking about in our technology, and not only the uniqueness of our lithium-ion battery sort of cathode chemistry, but also some of the great advantages it possesses in the marketplace today. But secondly, it allows us to have this financing at some greater terms as well. Next slide, we talk about that technology. And we touch on C4V's technology around speed of charging, the lifespan, costs, and safety, and we'll get into greater detail in the next couple of slides. Next slide talks about battery technology. So we mentioned about ABT Associates and the green batteries. We're also associated or a part of a program with US CAR. So the US CAR program is a program where we're providing cells where those cells are using virgin raw materials and recycled raw materials. The recycled raw materials is a collaboration with American Battery Technology company, and their technologies around recycling. But this whole program is with US CAR, which is made up of General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis in the US. Next slide goes into greater detail around our cathode chemistry that we touched on before. So our chemistry does not have any cobalt or nickel in the chemistry, and is mainly a lithium phosphate cathode technology, and there's some mixed metals in that. Now, as you can see, the comparison to other technologies there, while we don't have the energy of NMC or NCA, sort of about 10% below those, we have greater voltage and the capacity that's very close. But the huge advantages here is around safety, where our batteries are safe, like say an LFP battery, but we have greater capacity and greater cell energy than the LFP battery, but at similar costs. And as probably the audience is aware, you look at groups like Tesla, they are now producing LFP batteries as well. Where there was previously a misconception that LFP wouldn't work or wouldn't be suitable for the auto industry, well, they're moving towards LFP. And we've got something that, from a cell energy and a capacity point of view, is superior to LFP, but at the same cost. Next slide, we touch on fast charging. So we've put out a number of announcements over the last 12 months or so around fast charging. The most recent program or results have been about 20-minute charge and 20-minute discharge, where we've had results over 1,000 cycles, and we've had a retention rate of over 93%. So this is something we see as being imperative and a potential game changer in the marketplace. For those who've got electric vehicles, charging is the main pain point. So this is something that's very exciting for us going forward. Lastly, over the slide, we start touching on our graphite mine and our anode materials. Something that's really unique with what we have is the fact that we're able to produce a battery grade anode material via mechanical processes only. So we don't need any thermal or chemical or any acids in purifying that product. And that what that translates to is a very green product. And secondly, from a cost point of view, should be the cheapest product in the marketplace as well. Next slide talks about traditional processes when it comes to producing anode products versus our process. As you can see, apart from the sort of less steps, we've got some key advantages around high yields of our graphite and sort of the green attributes that come to it. And that all starts because of the initial product that we have in the ground with our graphite, which we produce a greater than 99% concentrate just via basic flotation. Next slide talks about our pilot equipment that we have in the US. So we've had a pilot plan doing a lot of the spheronization downstream processing of our graphite, and that's been going on for over 6 years. And we're looking at capitalizing on that in the coming future. Next slide talks about our ESG attributes around our graphite project. So high purity, there's no chemical or thermal purification. There's great aspects around employment in Tanzania. And we're currently working and have been from day one working very closely with the community. There's a resettlement program that we're doing under UN guidelines and so on, and we have a special economic zone also, which is a unique license that we're the only mining group in Tanzania to have. Next slide talks about the corporate social responsibility. We've been involved in a number of programs to assist the local community in Tanzania, from building schools to classrooms to medical facilities. And the final slide talks about why Magnis Energy Technologies. Well, that regulatory tailwind with, this is just very early stage with our battery production, which is going to scale up immensely, exponentially, very quickly. We have a highly experienced, incredible board. We believe we have world-class IP, the high-quality graphite, and recently we've signed some off-takes, not only on the battery side, but also with our graphite. So thank you, everyone, for your time and listening to our presentation. If there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Thanks, Frank. Lots of questions, always lots of questions for you. And I suggest that shareholders probably take some time to look further through your presentation. But first up, while fully automated production is due this quarter, overall completion is at 63%. Does this mean that completion will be 100% this quarter?
That's a really good question, and I'm glad that's been brought up. So we're working on our next update, just to answer another of the questions that I've seen that's popped up. But when we talk about 100% completion, a lot of that includes sort of some cosmetic items, like the painting of the building and a few sort of things around certain offices internally and so on. So once we're at fully automated production, to answer the question, we won't be at 100%. So the main sort of and the most important thing is hitting that production, rather than some of the other sort of external works that contribute to being at 100%. In providing that next update, we'll make sure we answer that question in greater detail, and at what sort of percentage rate we will be at when we are at that fully automated production. But at the moment, we are on track for fully automated production, and no, it won't be at 100% at that point. But that's not sort of being at 100% isn't the key thing here. It's starting that production and then working towards revenues in the third quarter.
And Frank, obviously the US government's had a very large grant program, which has allocated about $6 billion in this space. And more of that should be available for the distribution from June. Do you consider the project is in a good position to receive a potential grant?
Personally, yes. And in regards to the 6 billion you mentioned, where there's about 3 billion for cell manufacturing and then for supply chain partners and battery materials, we have applied in there, and we are in a short list as well. So we're quietly confident that we will be able to access government grants and government funding for our scale up.
And is that sort of grant the kind of what will enable you to accelerate to kind of 38 gigawatts per hour?
So both the grant will assist, but some of the sort of larger funding that we're working towards will assist. And yeah, that is a large part of the plan. But there's a number of conversations going on at the moment, not only from governments but also from strategics, from groups who have been in the energy space but looking at getting into the battery space. So we're looking at a number of funding avenues, from public to sort of private money and strategic money as well.
And just, can you give us a little bit more of an update on Nachu in terms of its how it's tracking for its delivery of its BFS?
So the BFS is on track for later this quarter as well. We've been speaking to a number of groups. There's obviously a lot of interest around graphite, and especially on the downstream anode materials. Obviously, we're involved in a number of discussions, not only on the battery side, but from the graphite side as well. And it seems that right now there's, like, apart from sort of lithium, we all know, what has happened there with lithium prices, but sort of seems like there's a bottleneck around nickel and anode materials. While there's a lot of graphite in the world, there's a shortage of anode materials, and with a lot of our discussions that are taking place, a number of groups are looking at securing supply in the future for these anode materials, being these OEMs, but they're looking at non-China supply as well, and diversifying their supply, because currently the majority comes from China. So it's really exciting, but going back on the Nachu side, BFS, we've kicked off a few sort of basic infrastructure pieces for production. We're looking forward to sort of trying to secure that funding for the mine later towards the end of the year, which will get us on track for production in the second half of 2024.
Thanks, Frank. That's all we have time for, but there's a lot more questions online. If you've got time to answer them, that'd be appreciated. If not, I'll shoot those questions through to you next week.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Frank.